The Grobner Library recently participated in the Library of Michigan's Michigan Notable Book Tour, where Doug Wilson, author of The Bird, The Life and Legacy of Mark Fidrych, spoke about his book and one of our most beloved Detroit Tigers. We are here with Doug Wilson, who is the author of The Bird, a fantastic book about Mark the Bird Fidrych, a wunderkind from 1976. And we are so glad to have you here with us today. Thank you very much for joining us on Around the Community.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
I wanted to know right out of the gate, you're an ophthalmologist. What made you want to write a book, or several books, I should say, about baseball?
Well, I always loved baseball. It's what I did when I was growing up, and I put on the book. I finally realized I had to get a different job, so my grade point average was higher than my batting average, and so. But I never lost my love for the game, and as time went by, I got some free time as my kids got older, and I thought I'd want to do what I loved.
And I understand you used to study the back of baseball cards?
Yeah, growing up, that's what we did. Everybody in the neighborhood was just baseball 24/7.
Where are you originally from?
Well, I grew up in Florida. My dad was in the Air Force, and so that was where I really got introduced to baseball.
And you just kind of followed it ever since? And
yeah.
You got a real passion for it? Have you ever been to a World Series?
No, never been to a World Series game.
Mm-hmm.
But,
you have two other books. Can you tell me about the other books that you've written?
The first one was about a guy, unfortunately a lot of people have forgot about. His name was Fred Hutchinson. He actually played for the Tigers in the 40s and managed them in the early 50s, but he was later a manager of the Cincinnati Reds, and unfortunately he got cancer, and the book was about his trying to finish his last year. The other book is a biography of Brooks Robinson that just came out this spring.
Wonderful. When did The Bird come out?
It came out last year.
Oh, okay. When it comes to writing, did it come naturally to you as an ophthalmologist, or was it something that you had to work at or take any classes for?
I didn't really take any classes other than what I had in college, but I tell people my class is really the books of people that I enjoy, particularly like David Moranis, Lee Montville, reading their biographies of Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and I've read them numerous times, and to try to do what they do that looks good, and so that's what I sort of pattern myself after.
Is it more of a conversational style that you have?
Yeah, and that's what I really like about Lee Montville's books is he makes it look so easy that you feel like you're just listening to a buddy tell a story. Mm-hmm. And but then when you try to do it, you realize this guy's really good, because it's hard to do that.
Now, as a man from Florida, what drew you to want to do a book on Mark the Bird Fidrych?
Well, actually, we moved to Kentucky later, and I've always been a Reds fan, but I've always just been a baseball fan in general. And I wanted to write about the good things of the game. You get tired of hearing about the steroids and scandals, and over my lifetime, there never really was an episode in baseball that was like what happened with the Bird in 1976. I mean, everybody who lived through it looks back at it with a smile on their face, and it did so much for the game of baseball and just people in general. And it was just a good story, and I was surprised nobody had really written a book about him over the past 30 years.
Mm-hmm. He became a cultural phenomenon. If I recall correctly, he pitched 2 complete 11-inning games. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's unheard of nowadays.
Yeah. He pitched 24 complete games that year, which was more than the entire major leagues combined had last year. And so, when he went out there, he was going to finish a game.
He had a particular style, didn't he?
Yeah, and that's what really endeared him to everybody. He was a great pitcher, but he put on a show, and it was just natural. He wasn't doing it to be doing that. It was just being himself and talking to people who grew up with him. What he did on the mound was how he was every day of his life. He was a guy who always had a big smile on his face, always enjoyed what he was doing, and he really loved interacting with people. And I think that charisma sort of came through to the fans, and that's what really lit everybody up.
Well, there's a number of great videos about him on YouTube, and for those who weren't around in the mid-'70s, like some of us, excuse me, you have to see the videos of Mark Fidrych. Mark Fidrych was the bird. He would go around the mound, and he would clean up, because he had to have his own place to step, and he talked to the ball. What other crazy things did he do?
Well, one of the things is just he was so energetic when his fielders would just make a routine play. You know, he would be shaking his fist, pointing at them, run across the field, shake their hands, and just got everybody involved. He sprinted on and off the field. Like he just couldn't wait to get there and couldn't wait to get off the field and tell everybody how much fun he had. After the games, he would run around shaking hands with the umpires, shaking hands with the cops behind the dugout. And every game they called him back. At home, every home game that season, they called him out for a curtain call.
Oh, this is unbelievable. He loves them. Look at that, shaking the policeman's hand. Look at that. This kid is terrific.
In my life, I've been in baseball 35 years. I have never in my life ever seen anything to equal this. The closest was when Dale Long hit a home run. Why wouldn't he cry?
He's so happy. Look at this.
Which was unheard of back
then. Yeah, they
then.
didn't do that back then. And you know, you look at it, it was a fifth-place team. The Tigers were going nowhere, but every fourth, fifth day, they filled the place, and they packed it because people wanted to see the bird do his thing.
Around the country, too.
Yeah.
I heard
General managers of other teams would call Ralph Houck, the manager, and ask him to shuffle his schedule, because they knew if Mark pitched in their park, they were going to have a sellout.
He became pretty much a rock star as an athlete. He was first athlete on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of.
Yeah, I kind of gave him he had a crossover appeal because it was the 70s, and you know, he had the curly hair, he was young, and so he hit a lot of people who weren't baseball fans followed him. And you know, he really did get the crossover appeal that really baseball fans and baseball players, and nobody's ever matched since.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was a phenomenon. Also, I don't know if you know this, but at 15 Mile and DeQuinder, probably 45 minutes away from here, half hour, there's the Polish American Museum. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I know he's a member.
Yeah, he's in their Hall of Fame, as a matter of fact. Have you been over there yet to see his uniform and everything?
No.
Oh, it's a neat experience. It's close by. I hope you have the opportunity while you're in the beautiful area of Romeo, Washington, Bruce. Travel over there and check it out. It's something to see. What advice would you have? Oh, I should ask before I ask for advice. Are you working on anything currently?
Yes, I just started a couple months ago. The publisher called me and wanted me to do a biography on Carlton Fisk, and we want to get it out by next October because that's the 40th anniversary of the big waving the home run fair, and so.
That is really great. So you started homework on that already?
Yeah.
Wow. Where do you go for sources of information?
Well, I always start just with looking in old newspapers, old magazines, just to see what people were saying at the time and to get all my facts straight. And then I try to contact as many people as possible who knew them from different stages of their life. And it's always neat to talk to people who grew up with somebody just to find out what they were really like as a kid. It's fun to see characteristics that they had as an adult, how they developed as a kid. And it's interesting to see what the major influences is. Why did somebody turn out the way they did?
What kind of influences did Mark Fidrych have?
Well, he came from a very stable family. He had 3 sisters. They were all real close. His dad had been a good baseball player in college, and his dad was probably his main influence growing up. His mom, talking to people, had about the same kind of personality as he did. They were real energetic. His dad was a little more laid back, but his dad was the one who really laid the foundation for baseball. And it was interesting, his dad kind of taught him some of the mannerisms that he did on the mound, you know, when Mark was little, he talked to several teachers who had him in school. Today he would have been labeled ADD, and they unfortunately would have put him on medication. Back then, you know, they just said he was an active guy. But you know, he always had a big smile on his face. He always had fun, and his dad realized that he needed something to do to keep him focused. He had talent, but you know, he had an active mind, and he was always fidgeting. And so his dad gave him some things that he sort of incorporated into a routine. And when he would hold the ball out talking, he was actually telling himself, you know, the situation, keep my arm down, you know, hit the corners, telling himself what to do. But when he was doing it on the field, it looked like he was telling the ball what to do. And the ball seemed to be doing what he told it to.
Absolutely.
But the thing with the mound, too, his dad always had told him to smooth the dirt out to make sure he landed in the right place. But nobody had ever seen a guy do that on a major league field. And initially, Mark didn't even know what the big deal was. He was just a young guy, a rookie, trying to make the team and trying to do his best. And he just did what he had always done in Little League all his life. And he didn't know what a big deal he was causing until people started showing up and cheering and telling him, you know, he was just being natural out there.
Unfortunately, though, his career didn't work out very long. He only lasted about a year.
Yeah, it was kind of a tragedy. You know, his first year, he lit up the country. He was Rookie of the Year. He hurt his knee in spring training the second year, and he tore cartilages in his knee and had to have surgery. So he got a start about 2 months late. When he came back, he was doing really well again. He won 6 games and was pitching great, named to the All-Star team. But the start before the All-Star game, about the 5th inning, his arm just went dead, and that was really the start of the end. He tried to come back about 4 or 5 years, but just never could quite make it.
He tore his rotator cuff,
yeah,
right?
and back then they didn't know it. So some people thought he was faking. Some people, you know, the doctors called everything tendonitis back then because they didn't have MRIs, didn't have arthroscopic surgery. In 1984, after he had been out of baseball 3 or 4 years, he did have arthroscopic surgery, and they found out he had a rotator cuff tear all along. But unfortunately, back then they couldn't fix it.
So what did he go on and do with his life?
Well, you know, that was what was interesting about the story, because you look at, here's a guy who came from a small town, didn't have a lot of money when he was little. You know, he was in the majors before the huge money hit, but he made a little bit. And but all of a sudden he was on top of the world, the most popular guy in the country, and then all of a sudden he loses it. And you think, you know, what happens to a guy like that? Is he bitter the rest of his life? Does he regret what might have been? And the really good thing about Mark Fidrych is he never had any regrets at all. When he was a rookie, he always told people he wanted to have a farm and drive a truck, and the reporters thought, you know, this guy's a nut. You know, but that's really what he did. When he first made a little money in baseball, he bought some land back in his hometown, and when he got out, he bought a big dump truck, and he was a blue-collar worker. He drove a dump truck, worked construction job sites, and had a farm, and he loved it. He had a blast. And talking to his friends and family, he never was bitter, never regretted what happened. He always told everybody, I'm just glad for the opportunities baseball gave me. You know, baseball gave me enough to buy this truck, and I'm happy for it. And I think that's kind of remarkable. It says something about his personality.
But unfortunately, that truck may have been his undoing.
Yeah, and that was another part of the tragedy. He was only 54 years old. He was at home working on the truck underneath it, and they found him later. He had an accident.
That's so sad, but he had such an incredible life in the meantime.
Yeah, he got more mileage out of his life than most people that live twice that long.
Incredible shining star.
Yeah.
Well, I need to ask you though, speaking of being an author and things of that nature, what advice would you give to upcoming authors, people who may be a dentist or an ophthalmologist? What kind of advice would you have for them if they want to get off the ground and start writing as well?
The biggest thing I would say is just do it. You know, there's an initial period where you're not sure And you know, it took me a long time to actually write something down and have the guts to show it to somebody. And that's the biggest step. Once you get over that, but also to find things that you like, that you think are good, and not plagiarize, but copy how they do it. And like I said, like with Lee Montville, before ever one of my books, I'll read a couple of his, and I've read them all so many times, but I read it to see how he did things. How does he attack a certain part of a guy's life? How does he, who does he talk to find out about certain childhood things? And just the style. You know, if you find an author or a couple authors you enjoy reading, you know, look at how they do things and do that. And that's more useful, I think, than any book that tells you how to do something.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to get out there and do it. One last question for you. What's really great about Doug Wilson being in our area is he is on a tour, right? There's a tour of book authors going around, because you are this book is one of the 20 notable books.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about this great book tour you're on?
Well, it's sponsored by the Library of Michigan, the Michigan Notable Book. And each year they pick 20 books that are either from authors from Michigan or about Michigan things. And the library sponsors the authors coming to different areas. And they, being a Detroit Tiger subject, they booked me here at I was in Troy last night, and here in Romeo today, and then Grosse Pointe tomorrow. So just the general Detroit area.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to our state.
Thanks. It's neat meeting people who lived through it. And there were a lot of people last night who came up and said, I was at the game, the New York Yankees Monday night game, you know, just telling about the atmosphere and how things were. And it's just really fun to talk to guys like that.
Well, it's got to be rewarding as an author to do all the history and explore all the history, and then to meet the people who were there and could bring the emotion to your words and can connect with you in that way. That's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate having you here, and welcome to Michigan. And you need to check this book out. It is The Bird by Doug Wilson. It's a fantastic read, and if you can't find it at the bookstore, you can always find it at your local library.